Greetings, fellow world weavers. My name's Ben. This is Rookie DM. If you are trying to overcome your latest DM disaster, build a new world, or just learn more about what it takes to run a Dungeons and Dragons game, I invite you to join me as I learn and we learn together how to create awesome experiences for our players and have a lot of fun along the way. This is the second video ever on this channel, so if you missed the first one, I encourage you to go back and watch that first, as that sets the stage and a lot of context for what we're going to talk about today. Now, as I mentioned last time, I'm considering myself a rookie DM, as I have only run a total of 12 sessions so far between two different campaigns. It's the same campaign ran with two different groups. The first group I had to step away from due to a family medical issue that was kind of long-standing and took up a very large amount of my time for a number of months. And the second group is one that I pulled together literally from the internet, just posted on some blogs and Discord channels, and very quickly found a group of total strangers who just were willing to drive to my house and play Dungeons and Dragons, which I thought was really freaking cool. So today I want to talk a little bit about how I ran session 0 for both groups and what was a little bit different with each group and how I managed those differences. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what level we started at for each group and why. And that'll be about it for this video. So today we're really just focusing on session 0 and what I learned. I watched a lot of videos from other creators on YouTube about how to run a session 0, and I found those to be really helpful. I took bits and pieces from different creators and, you know, just kind of ran with it. I was really fortunate because the first group that I ran D&D for, I already had some history with. I'd already played as a player with the group before the DM that we had at the time had to step away just due to like life getting busy and, you know, stuff happens. So I stepped in as the new DM and we had a couple of new players, but for the most part, the group was intact. And that was really helpful for me because I already had a pretty good idea of, like, you know, people's personalities, what they wanted out of a D&D game, and how they interacted and gelled together. So there was a lot of stuff, a lot of ground that I didn't really have to cover with that group ahead of time because, like, there's already a chemistry there, which was really great. The second group I had to do a little bit more work with because we were all strangers. In fact, the only person in this group that I already knew is my brother, who is one of the players in this campaign. Everyone else, we all met for the first time at my house. We, you know, aside from the little bit of conversation that everyone had on Discord, where I'm kind of running the chats for the campaign, I decided to, you know, do a little bit more work on the prep just to try and help ensure everything was a smooth transition. So what did that entail? So we're going to talk about session 0 actually in a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the lead up to session 0 because it really helps. And again, for the context, for those of you who missed the first video, I am running a long-form homebrew campaign in a homebrew setting and world that I made myself over a period of about 2.5 to 3 years. And I have so many notes. I have so much. I still to this day can't decide how I want to organize everything because there's just, you get to a certain amount of content that is just cumbersome no matter how you organize it. I've tried World Anvil, which is actually a really cool tool, but is a lot of work still to keep organized. I have a lot of stuff in Evernote, which same thing, good tool, but a lot of work to keep organized. I have stuff in Discord that I don't have in either of the other. Like, I'm a little scattered. I'm still figuring out how to organize everything. And then I have a lot of stuff up here in my head that has not made it to paper or a digital paper yet. Leading up to session 0, for the second group in particular, I mentioned doing a little bit more work, and that involved, I had 2 video calls with each player prior to session 0. So the first video call was just a quick 20 to 30 minute meet and greet kind of a thing. I got on the call, learned a little bit about them, talked to them a little bit about their expectations for a D&D campaign. Like, what do you want out of a game? What is it that you find most fun in D&D? And then shared a little bit about the setting. Like, hey, this is a classic high fantasy setting. There's lots of magic. There's opportunity for you to shape the world. And, you know, just kind of gave just a little bit of just some broad strokes of what to expect in the campaign, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And I told them, I was like, listen, like, there'll maybe be sometimes some like elements of horror or darker stuff, but I don't gravitate toward that as like a frequently occurring thing. It's going to be more of like certain locations or certain quest lines may have it, but it's not, this is not like Curse of Strahd, Castlevania, dark fantasy kind of a setting. Even though I like that stuff, it's not what I sort of gravitate toward all the time as I'm creating locations and stuff. I kind of like just classic high fantasy. It's what I love. And so, you know, just sharing some of that stuff with them, also asking about any phobias. Is there, you know, any particular style of D&D play that you really want to avoid? So kind of getting the likes and the dislikes. And then I took notes, you know, from what they said. And it was not very many notes for most people. It was like a few lines. And I was fortunate that pretty much everyone that I ended up bringing into the group, which was basically just the first 6 people that signed up, all were more like story driven in their preferences. That's what they wanted. They wanted a story driven campaign with an opportunity for their characters to role play, shape the world, you know, battle epic monsters or beasts or villains or whatever. And I was like, okay. And there was a lot of commonality between them as I went through these video calls. And then I told them, I said, okay, I want you, you know, over the next week or so, create your character, start working on a backstory, and we're going to have a follow-up call where we're going to get you kind of figure out where your hometown is, let you have some voice in shaping what that hometown is or region or wherever it is that you're from, and go from there. And so then that was what the second call was. The second call, we talked about their character, we talked about backstory, we talked about, you know, where in the world they might be from, what NPCs they may or may not know, things like that. And, you know, some players gave me a lot of material to work with and some gave a lot less. And so, you know, and there's not necessarily a right or wrong way there. It's just, you know, different people have different levels of time investment that they want to put into this like lengthy backstory or whatever, or short backstory, which is totally fine with me. But one thing that here's a lesson. One thing I wish I'd done sooner was I wish I would have right out of the gate really encouraged them to create ambiguities in their backstory or leave unanswered questions. I think a lot of players kind of instinctively want to fill in all the blanks, and I as a DM actually prefer unanswered questions, because then you know, things that the player doesn't know, things that the character would not know about their backstory, like maybe their father was assassinated for some reason that the kid was too young to understand or know about, or, you know, whatever the case may be, or maybe they've had some, you know, vague and mysterious recurring dream that involves something, or, you know, I love, like, if you watch Critical Role, Taliesin Jaffe's character Molly Mock literally just woke up buried in the ground and had no memory of their past. And it's like stuff like that as a dungeon master is a gift. It's a gift because it's like, it's so open-ended. I could do anything with that. And then of course, if you watched campaign 2 of Critical Role, no spoilers, but the ambiguities and unanswered questions there ended up having a major impact on how that campaign unfolded. just to not spoil anything if you haven't watched that. So I really wanted to, I wish that I had encouraged the players right out of the bat to leave unanswered questions and ambiguities, because it wasn't something I thought of until much later in the process. So, you know, again, like I said, this is the whole point of this, is to create a campaign that their characters have a real role in, and there's tie-in with the main story arc, which we'll get into as these videos unfold. So that's how I led into session 0. I also invited, we started this campaign around the Super Bowl, and I know there's not typically a ton of overlap between D&D and sports fans, but it's an excuse to have food and beer and have people over and meet before session 0. So I invited everyone to come watch the Super Bowl, which ended up not being a very good game. But we at least got to have some beer and some food and chat, and not everyone was able to come, but most of the players were able to meet. And after having had 2 video conversations with each player and meeting most of them in person, I felt a very high degree of confidence that this group of individuals would work together pretty well, and that we would have a great time at the table. Everyone seemed to have a great attitude and you know, seemed to work well together. So we're kind of fortunate in that regard. Coming into session 0, the first thing is, you know, have everyone introduce one another, especially it's a new group. Nobody knew each other's names yet, or had just met 5 minutes ago in some cases. So just wanted everyone to, like, and so I just asked, hey, give me your name, give me where you're from, and tell me a hobby you have outside of D&D. Something really simple. I mean, it's a little tropey and boring, because everyone, like, if you go to any group thing, they'll ask you, like, what's your name, where are you from, and there's a third question of some kind. But, you know, tried to keep it a little bit lighthearted and quick, just to kind of break the ice a little bit. Then I shared a little bit about my DM style and table expectations. Just talked a little bit about, like, who I am as a DM. You know, I wanted to encourage them, like, hey, if you have a crazy idea and you think it's not going to work, ask. Like, maybe there's a way that we can make it work. Or maybe, you know, you say, can I do this? To be like, yes, but this may be a consequence. Or, yes, you can do that, but you may have to do this first, or whatever. Like, I want to be very yes and with player requests, and I wanted them to know that, because I want them to feel, because, you know, again, strangers, they don't know me, and so I wanted them to feel the freedom to ask those questions and to speak up. And also, if something in the campaign wasn't going well for them, I told them, like, guys, message me, like, let me know if you have either a problem with another player, or you're saying, like, hey, you know, the pace of the campaign has been a little much for me, can we slow down? Or there's been way too little combat, or whatever it may be. I want to hear feedback from the players, because ultimately at the end of the day, I view my role as the facilitator of fun, right? Like, we're here to tell stories and have fun and escape from all the craziness of life. So that's what I wanted here. I did very specifically request that we avoided political and religious related discussions at the table, because everyone was so new and we didn't know each other. And I knew from the conversations I had with people that there were some differing opinions on those very topics. And again, you know, we started this right after this last presidential election, where, you know, listen, like, things in American politics are not particularly friendly right now. And I didn't want to bring any of that nastiness into the table, regardless of people's individual beliefs. I really wanted everyone to be able to have fun and relax together. And so that was a request that I did specifically make, and everyone seemed on board with it, and there haven't been any issues so far. And I told them, I was like, listen, like, as time goes on, we get to know one another more and have that mutual respect and affection for one another as friends, then, you know, maybe we can have some more, like, dicey or complicated conversations about whatever cultural or political or religious topics may come up. But I want to have that repertoire and that history with one another first, before we dive into things that could potentially be very contentious. And again, we're here to have fun, right? So that was something that I requested, and so far it's been great. It's been really good. And I as the DM know, like, this player over here has a very different opinion on politics or whatever than this player over here, but there's no clash, there's no argument, whatever, because like we're playing a game, we're having fun. So that's worked really well. I did have everyone for the first campaign, I gave the option of rolling for stats, but I did make them roll HP. For the second campaign, we're rolling stats and HP. And I just like doing this because it's I like the dice deciding things. That's, to me, that's part of the fun of D&D as a player and as a DM, is the dice get to have a say in how everything unfolds. And so with rolling stats, I did have sort of a bracketing system. You roll 4d6, draw out the lowest, and you do that for every stat. I allowed them to assign stats however they want, so they can, you know, if they want strength to be their highest stat, they can do that. I know some DMs, like if you watch Matt Colville's videos, Colville's awesome, but he's a little strict. He actually has his players roll for strength, and whatever you get is what you get, and then you roll for con, whatever you get in dex, whatever you get is what you get, and so on. And it's kind of irrespective of class. And so you could have a barbarian with their highest stat as wisdom, and you could have a wizard with their highest stat as strength. And to me, that just doesn't make any sense, because I feel like there's an element of like, if you are a person growing up in this world and you have a body that is just big and athletic and strong, there's certain things that you're just probably going to be more naturally drawn to, which will inform the decisions you make that leads you to eventually having a class, whatever that may be. Same thing for like a wizard, right? It's not that wizards are intelligent, it's that people who have high intelligence tend to gravitate toward wizardry. That's kind of the way that I look at it. Or people, it's not that monks are dexterous or rogues are dexterous. It's that people with natural abilities toward those things tend to gravitate toward those classes. And that's kind of the way that I look at it. So to me, it makes sense to allow the players to assign stats however they want. But I did want to make them roll. And you have to roll 46, drop the lowest, do it for all the stats, and then you need to have a total score between 68 and 80, I believe was the threshold. Some do between 70 and 80. If I remember correctly, the standard array is 72. So with this range of 68 to 80, you could technically have a little bit worse than a standard array, but you also could have like a good deal better than a standard array. So you could go, up to 4 lower and up to 8 higher than a standard array, which I felt was pretty good. I felt like that worked pretty well. We did end up with a couple players who, 2 different players rolled exactly 68, which I was a little bit surprised and personally slightly bummed about. I kind of wanted them to have better stats, but they were super chill about it, and I told everyone, listen, like there's going to be plenty of magic items in this campaign, like you'll be fine. Like you're not going to roll such a bad stat block that you're just going to be crippled for an entire campaign. Like there's so many ways to mitigate that. The other thing too is, I love the idea of having, if you have a cripplingly low charisma or something, I think it can be really cool because you can role play that. It can become part of the story. Or if you think about, a barbarian that has really low intelligence, like Travis Willingham played for the first campaign with Grog. If you pay really close attention, I think like the Critical Role cast does, I think, a good job of sort of incorporating their stats into the role play, especially the really low stats. And I really like that. And I encourage, and I'm not trying to compare myself or my group to Critical Role, because like, listen, I'm not a voice actor. I don't do very good voices. I try. But I do think we can learn some things from different players and different groups, and I like to learn. So there's no pressure. I'm not trying to be Matt Mercer. These players are not the cast of Critical Role. Like, we're not Hollywood actors. We're not pretending to be. But I do like the way that they embrace the dice rolls and let the dice shape the story. And I think that's how D&D should be played in general, is let the dice shape the story. After we rolled for stats and HP and got their level 1 characters made, we rolled into a test combat. Now, the test combat served two purposes. The first purpose is for me, because I'm a new DM, and when I did session 0 for the first time with the old group, it was literally the very first combat I had ever run with a group for D&D. I had never run combat before. So I decided, you know what? Screw it. I want to have one as part of session 0. It'll let them kind of test run their characters a little bit and kind of get some action in session 0. And it'll also give me a feeling for what their characters are capable of. How much can I throw at them without killing these low-level characters? Because I don't want to accidentally TPK like on session 1 or session 3. Like that's not fun for anyone. That's not what I want to do. We had a test combat with goblins. Now, one thing that was cool is I took some advice from Matt Colville with this, and I customized one of the goblins a little bit. Actually, I customized all of them. I gave them all a couple extra hit points, and then I made one a mage goblin that actually had the ability to cast firebolt. So had from a mechanic standpoint, not that much different from firing a crossbow or a short bow, but a little bit of different flavor, makes the combat feel a little bit more dangerous. But the other thing is, this goblin, the leader of this little goblin clan, had the ability to with their bonus action, rally the troops. Rallying the troops meant that they could call out one of the PCs as the target, and then all of the other goblins had advantage on that target for the round, which created a sense of urgency in killing the head goblin, even though he was trying to stay back and stay out of the fray as much as possible, and also struck fear into the heart of whatever player happened to be called out that particular round, which made it fun, and it made the combat more challenging, because if the goblins are kind of, for the most part, focusing their attack on one particular player, it makes it a lot easier for that player to go down, and then now your healer needs to come into the picture, and I just felt like it made the combat a lot more interesting and a lot more fun, and it worked well. No one died in the test combat, but I intentionally made it difficult because I wanted to see, like, okay, where's like that limit that I can push them to, since this is a practice battle. It's not like a real encounter. This is not a freaking high stakes battle. It's just a test. So I kind of threw a lot at them, and they survived. They did great both times, both parties. So that helped give me a lot of context for, it's just one fight, but it gave me some context for balancing encounters in the future. And I found that some of my early encounters were a little too easy because I was relying on the CR system, and the CR system is not very good. But especially when you're dealing with, the first party was 5, this party is 6. So once you're above that 4 player mark, which is what CR system is balanced for, it really doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean very much. I found that, like, on D&D Beyond's encounter creator, if I don't have the encounter at deadly, it's not very hard. It's actually relatively trivial for them, especially for the players that are a little bit more experienced and strategic. For the less experienced players, they're learning fast. In the new party, I have a wizard who's learning very fast why he does not need to be going up into melee with enemies. The squishy wizard is learning how squishy he is, which is part of the fun. It's part of the fun. So for the first group, I want to talk about starting levels a little bit and how we kind of decided that. So the first group that I had was all experienced players. All of them have been playing D&D 5e for at least a couple of years, had played a number of characters before. With the first group, I decided to give them the opportunity or the option of starting anywhere between level 2 and level 5. And the reason that I gave them for starting as high as level 5 is I said, listen, guys, I know, you and I both know, that the vast majority of D&D campaigns never make it to like level 15, much less level 20. And I wanted them to have an opportunity to experience higher level D&D, because I think higher level D&D is really, really fun. And even though it's harder to balance because the players are so powerful, I embraced the challenge of doing that, or of eventually getting up to there. And I thought, if we start at level 1 or level 2, we'll probably never get to level 15 or 20 before someone moves away or the campaign ends or whatever. But I gave them the option, and I kind of expected that they would want to start at level 5, but they actually all universally agreed to start at level 2. And I thought that was really interesting. And the reason they gave is they said that they really wanted to experience the journey of starting from zeros to heroes, to put in like the cliche way. They wanted to start from low level nobodies and eventually earn their way into being very capable heroes. Because if you think like a level 5 party of 5 or 6 players is pretty powerful. They can do a lot. And so if you want to experience that sort of zero to hero arc of being nobodies that nobody cares about to highly respected and renowned heroes of legend, you got to start at like level 1 or level 2, right? So that's what they decided that they wanted to do. And I was happy to oblige. Now with the second group, it was a little different. They were comprised of half brand new players, never played a session of D&D in their life, and then half more experienced players. So for that reason, I did not give the option. I said we're going to start at level 1 because I wanted to give a chance for the new players to learn some of the basics before the abilities and the spells and the class abilities and all that just start to stack up too much, because man, stuff can get complicated really fast, especially because one of my new players is the Squishy Wizard, and Wizard's not one of the easier classes to learn. So I said, you know what, I really want to give you guys an opportunity to really learn your characters before you level up too much and there's just like too many abilities and you can't keep track of them all. So we decided to start at level 1 for this group. Now I was a little hesitant to do this because I don't love starting groups at level 1 because they're so squishy. They're so squishy. They have like 7, 8, 10 hit points, maybe 12 depending on the race and class, but not particularly heavy hitters. And I had to correct something. We did not roll for HP for session 0 for the second group because they only started at level 1. Level 1 HP is set. You don't roll for level 1 HP. But I did tell them that they can re-roll 1s for their HP. So as they level up, I let them re-roll 1s. Now, if you get a 2, tough luck, but I like for them to not have to re-roll or not, leveling up and getting only 1 hit point just sucks. And if that happens to you 2 or 3 levels in a row, or 2 or 3 out of 5 levels, your HP starts to get really far behind other people, and if you happen to be one of the squishier classes, then it's even worse. So I really wanted to avoid that and let them re-roll 1s for HP as they level up. Well, I think that's about does it for session 0. As we go into the next video, I want to talk about session 1 for both groups. And, as we walk through this here in the early stages, we'll be talking about both groups. Like I said, the first group I went through to session 9, and then I had session 10 notes prepared. The very first part of this campaign is a little bit more linear. It's a little bit more narrow in scope. Because, again, as I said, I wanted to start the party on an adventure where they could have a reason to be a party. Because in real life and in game, this second group of people I had was complete strangers. Did not know each other, had no history together. And so I thought it just made sense to do it that way. And especially when dealing with newer players who are not as experienced with D&D, I thought, having it be a little bit more narrow, think of it almost like a video game where you have it's an open world game, but like the first little bit of it is kind of linear. Like think of like Red Dead Redemption 2. You start in the Blizzard and the open world opens up soon. It's not very far into the game that you get access to it, but just enough to get you acclimated to the story, the mechanics, and all of that. And that was kind of my mentality with how I crafted this campaign. So as we get into the next video, we're going to talk about Okoe Island. We're going to talk about what happened to the players after the ship Melora's Grace exploded during a storm, in the middle of the night, in the middle of the ocean. We're going to talk about how the two different groups handled the exact same situations and how I've crafted and changed the second round of this campaign for the new players and the new group. Because not only were we starting at level 1, but I have 6 players instead of 5. So it's a little bit of a different situation. So keep building worlds, keep crushing it. Leave comments down below. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, or just share your adventure and your story. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you in the next video.